Hi, Alana.
What's up, Jen?
Welcome to the most awkward podcast ever, episode 1.
So where should we start?
I think we should start with like how we even know each other.
All right, let's do it. How do I know you, Jen?
We know each other from camp, growing up
We,
in the 90s.
wait, there's a song I recently discovered. It's called Rugrats, and he takes the theme song from Rugrats and puts it over like a rap beat, and he raps about 90s cartoons, and it's like the coolest song ever.
Okay, we're gonna need to put an edit of that in, and that might actually have to be our theme song.
Yes.
That was genius.
Oh, hey, yo. This. I'm so excited. That's gonna be awesome.
I'm Jen, a licensed clinical social worker and certified personal trainer.
I'm Alana, a certified strength and conditioning coach who specializes in mental performance. And together, we're bringing you better physical and mental health on the Better Health podcast. We believe mental and physical health are one and the same.
We'll cover topics of getting creative with your workouts, getting out of your comfort zone, our own personal experiences with mental health and addiction, weight room intimidation, and so much more. We'll be releasing episodes every other week, so stay tuned everywhere you listen to podcasts.
So, yeah, we met at camp. We think it was around 97, 98, right? Mm-hmm. We were saying before this how we were in the same bunk 8, but we weren't super friends yet.
No. When did we become super friends?
Well, we never disliked each other.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But it wasn't until we got a little bit older and got into drugs and alcohol, and that's when we became friends, which is hilarious because we kind of stopped being friends. But again, like we just went separate ways, right? And then we reconnected in sobriety years later.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, we stopped being friends probably because I stopped being friends with everybody when I got clean.
Sure.
I like could not talk to anybody after that, right? Like all the people that like we've historically used with, like I could not be friends with anybody. So I had to distance myself from everyone that we had grown up with.
That makes sense. And you got clean our freshman year of college, right?
December of 2007.
Yeah, and for me, that's like when my addiction just took off. Mm-hmm. So it makes sense why we couldn't be friends at that time.
Exactly. But ironically, we reconnect. Not ironically, this has happened a couple of times. I'm grateful for in my recovery, but a few people have reached out to me when they have been having some ideas that they maybe want to get clean and sober, and they've reached out to ask either for advice or support, and you were one of those people. And I don't remember when exactly it was, but you reached out to me. And I can't remember I don't think we ever spoke on the phone. I think it was all through text. Mm-hmm. And I don't remember everything about it, but you were like, I need help. Like, can you help me get clean and sober?
Yeah, and I didn't do that at that time. I think it was like, I barely remember that, but I know it happened. And I wish I remember when it was. I want to say it was a year or two before I actually got clean and sober, because I did that in 2014. Mm-hmm. And like, it's just honestly from when I graduated college in 2011 to 2014, like it's just very, very blurry. So I don't know. I reached out to you during that time. I can't tell you when, but yeah, I did. And then I think when I got clean and sober, did I tell you? Like when I actually did it?
No.
I didn't tell you.
No, you did not.
When did I tell you?
I think you told me. Well, I'm trying to think because I don't feel like you don't hide it on social media, right? Like, would you have posted if you had some time that you were celebrating an anniversary?
I wouldn't post that, but I posted articles about just like shit that I've wrote online about my journey.
One, I may have seen one of those. Okay. And then like interpreted it obviously myself as like, oh, heck yeah, Alana got clean. Yeah. But I think it was after I recorded a podcast with someone else that we went to camp with. I think you reached out because I was like very, very open and honest in that podcast about my journey. And I think you reached out and then we spoke when I was still living in Buffalo. We spoke on the phone, and that's when we really talked about you being in recovery finally. So that was only 3, 4 years ago.
That's crazy. Yeah.
That's
Yeah, I don't know why I didn't like reach out beforehand, but
It all happens for a reason. You reached
yeah.
out at the time that you did because that was the time that you did.
Yeah, honestly, I think I was like scared to. I don't know why, but I think I was for a while. I remember being scared too.
Scared of like my reaction or
I don't know if that was it, but definitely social anxiety played a role, right? I was just scared.
mm-hmm. Social anxiety is a real, real struggle. Been there.
Yeah, like I can't tell you what I was scared of, but just like when I think about reconnecting with anybody from camp today, like I don't because I get scared. Like I don't know why I'm scared. Maybe rejection, like, oh my God, they hate me. Um, Stuff that I make up in my head about reasons you would hate me, stuff like that.
hmm Oh yeah. Oh, I had that many, 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 many times throughout my recovery, thinking about wanting to reconnect with people and then being afraid that they were going to be like, no, you disgusting addict. I don't want to have anything to do with you.
Sure. Yeah.
It's wild what our brains can convince us of.
Yeah. But since we've reconnected, right, I think it's so interesting and funny because you're a therapist who just got her personal training cert, right? And I'm a strength and conditioning coach who works a lot on mental performance. So it just makes sense for us to reconnect and be doing this. So I'm going to ask you now, like, why did you become a therapist?
Oh, so there's kind of like two points to this in like why I became a therapist. One, I was in therapy pretty much my whole life. I have just a lot of experience with how beneficial not only like traditional therapy can be, but like I had a lot of really powerful teachers in my life. And like my guidance counselor in high school was like really, really, really important to me. And so that's like one part of it, right? Is just like my whole life I had experience in therapy, but that was never something that like I thought in high school that I wanted to do. But when I got clean, I took 2 years off from college. So I got clean 2 months after my 18th birthday. So I left college, took 2 years off, thought I'd never go back to school, decided at 2 years clean to go back for a KSAC to be a credentialed alcohol and substance abuse counselor because I thought that's all I could do, right? I know recovery, I know addiction, that's all I know how to do, and that's all I can help people with is what I thought. And I applied to the program at this one college, well, it's called Malloy University now, but it was Malloy College when I was there. I applied to their addiction studies program to be in this KSAC. And I started that. And the woman who was the head of the addiction studies program said to me, Jen, you're like only 20 years old. Why don't you go back for a degree? And she's like, I think you should go for a degree in social work. And I was like, no, I can't get a degree. I only know addiction. That's it. I can only do that. And I spoke to my mom about it, and we were like, okay, fine. And I had gotten to a point where I was like, fine, fine, fine. I'll like apply to go back to school. And I applied only to Malloy's social work undergrad program. And it was literally the only school I applied to. And I got in and I started that program. And that was an advanced standing program, which means that you were in like an accelerated program. So I ended up getting my bachelor's and my master's in 5 years instead of 6. And I fell in love with social work. I just like fell in love with it and knew that this was like exactly what I was meant to do and what I wanted to do. And it was like all encompassing to like all of the things that I love about just like working with people and understanding people from like a whole person perspective as opposed to like just your symptoms or just your like family history. Social work is just such an interesting field, and I just fell in love with it and fell in love with all the opportunities that social work degrees provide. And so like I just knew that that's exactly what I wanted to do. And I had, years of working for agencies. I worked for substance use agencies, I worked for community mental health agencies, and then I just knew I wanted to be in private practice. And then I was like, maybe we can branch a little bit out of clinical social work and do something else that also incorporates working with a whole person, but on a slightly different level. And I was like, maybe I should just get a personal training certificate. So I did.
Hmm.
And here
Yeah,
we
I
are.
love that. Because like mental and physical health, the way the system is set up is they're separate, right? But they're for me at least, and I think for you too, they are so connected. Like this morning, I was just not feeling life this morning, right? It was a weird morning. And I was like, I need to go for a run. And I didn't because we had our meeting. Um, but like I just knew that if I went for a run, I would have felt so much better.
Yes, 1000%. I agree with you. I wholeheartedly believe that these should not be treated as two separate systems. I think that they should be treated as one. And there is a lot of stigma still around working on mental health where there's not that stigma around working on physical health. And that could just be societally, we're like kind of groomed to believe that the way we look is more important than the way we feel. And like those are two things that go hand in hand. And like as a trauma therapist, so like I specialize in treating trauma, and the connection between your physical body and like your brain is so strong that it's, to me, it's like such a disservice to people when we're separating them or when we're saying like don't talk. And there's an element here of, if you're not necessarily trained in working with mental health, yes, I don't think that it is wise to get into discussing mental health like an average personal trainer who has no life experience with therapy or has never been open about their struggles. I don't think that that person necessarily should be having an open conversation with their personal training client if their client says, I'm feeling suicidal. Like that, there's a line that I think that there needs to be. But as someone who has a ton of experience with their own mental health, has gone to their own therapy, and is really in tune with like where their own knowledge lies, I don't think that these things should be kept separate. I don't think that you should say to a personal training client, oh, sorry, that's out of my scope of practice. I can't talk to you about that. But I also don't think we should say, here's what I think that you should do and let me diagnose you if we don't have the credentials to do so. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like twofold.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of a fine line, but like it's also not at the
Yeah.
same. And I mean, you said a lot of good things there, but yeah, just the way you were talking about with trauma and the physical body. Have you read the book The Body Keeps the Score?
Course I have.
Yeah,
Every
I
trauma therapist has read
yeah,
Bessel van der Kolk's The Body Keeps the Score. It's fantastic.
yeah, I have a feeling and I'm hopeful because it seems that more and more treatment, whether it is physical or mental, seems to be incorporating those two. And like it really is, I think, so true that you hold trauma, right? You hold stuff in your body. And for me, someone who is just extremely anxious all the time, like I just looking back on everything and having all the therapy that I have had, I kind of feel like I just came out of the womb anxious, right? And then just the perfect storm made all this other stuff happen in my life. But someone who is so anxious, like I need to move. Like I walk my dog for hours a day and I lift for like probably a little bit too long every day right now. But like it's because I'm getting my anxiety out.
Yes. Yes. I'm exactly the same way. I feel like I came out of the womb highly anxious.
Yeah.
And movement is, whether it's walking outside or jumping on my trampoline or lifting, movement is like so important for me. And when I don't have movement, I feel even more anxious. So, like right now, my neck is like all messed up, and I have not been able to work out for a couple of days because I'm trying to respect my body. But it's also
Mhm.
like, I'm going to go outside for a walk today is what I'm going to do to like get that energy out. Now, the one thing I want to say about The Body Keeps the Score, because that is a fantastic book, and Bessel van der Kolk, Dr. Bessel van der Kolk is literally one of the reasons the diagnosis of PTSD exists. He is one of the people who helped that become a diagnosis back in the 80s when it was originally called shell shock for veterans returning from war. That book is very can be very triggering for people. And so like I feel like there should be like a little bit of a warning that it's a very, very detailed account of a lot of traumas. And so for anybody else like listening, it can be quite triggering. And so I would like proceed with caution when reading The Body Keeps the Score. But that book is what made me want to learn more and become a certified EMDR therapist.
Oh, wow. I
But I
love life-changing books.
Yep, yep,
Yeah,
yep. That book was one of the reasons that was like where I first learned about EMDR, and I was like, I need to be an EMDR therapist. And so I became one.
that's awesome. I love how a few times you've just like, yeah, I just like, so I became one, right? There was this thing, so I did. There's this thing, so I did it, right? That's so cool.
Which is so funny because, well, it's not funny. It's just like a testament to one, therapy, two, the program that we know works so well is in in our childhood. I don't know if you ever experienced this, but as someone who is really anxious and as someone who is highly self-conscious and literally hated themselves, I would never have spoken like that. I would never have been like, there was this thing, and so I did it. It would have been, there was this thing, so I absolutely did not do it. I was too afraid to do it. I thought I'd fail, so I didn't do it. I didn't even try. And it's just like such a testament to being clean and in recovery and therapy and like the work that we do in these programs that propels us to be able to do the things that we want to do, which I could say the same for you. You decided you wanted to do this business full time and you're
Mhm.
doing it.
Yeah, that's a funny story though, because like this was not my choice, my plan, right? My plan. So I had two plans, Jen. Plan one was to
Mhm.
go to grad school in Colorado, where you currently are, and to meet the man of my dreams out there and start a family and like my life out there, right? That was my plan. And I was going to get as far away from central New Jersey as possible.
Mm.
And then God's plan was just like, nope, I'm going to give you a great job in central New Jersey. And like, here you go. Right. So I'm back where I started. And through being here the past few years, I kind of fell into a teaching job. And I'm not a teacher, I'm a coach.
Mhm.
And teachers are like, we think we know that they're superheroes because we say it all the time, but we have no idea. Like they're just really superheroes of this world, right? Not for me though. So my plan was to build my side hustle for another 2 or 3 years and maybe make this jump to do it full time. But the universe was just like, nope, you're going to do this now. And the reason that happened was because they got rid of, I taught health and wellness at a private school for 3 years. And they decided to get rid of my position. They told me like in January. So since about September, now we're in October, so for like 2 months, right? Technically, I've been chasing this full time, but at the same time, that's been, yes, a goal of mine for a while.
Mhm. But sometimes the universe does things for us on the timeline that it believes we should be on.
Yeah, and it's crazy because I don't know if I would have had the courage to actually make this jump. Like there always would have been a reason not to do it.
Mm.
Right?
The universe knows that.
Exactly. Yep.
And does for us sometimes what we're too afraid to do for ourselves.
So when you were saying like I was gonna this thing and then I did it, right? So when I was studying exercise science at school in Colorado, where I was gonna start my life, I never thought that I could get into the private sector. Like I thought I just wanted to be a collegiate strength and conditioning coach because I knew nothing about business and I don't have the confidence. I'm not smart enough. I don't have the people skills, right? I can't start my own business. So it was just not an option for me.
Mm.
And then honestly, like the pandemic happened and the pandemic was terrible and it sucked. But for me, it gave me the time to really just do a lot of work on myself, and I did. And then just this dream kind of came together and started out as the side hustle thing. And now I'm just like, yeah, I'm chasing this dream now.
Which is incredible. Which is incredible. How did you decide that you wanted to be a strength and conditioning coach? Like, how did you decide that you wanted to study exercise science? Was that like something you always knew you wanted to do as an athlete, or did that come at a later time?
I had no idea what I wanted to do. I think my plan when I was still in active addiction in college was to be like a graphic designer or like illustrate children's books and just get high and do art. That was kind of my plan.
Mhm.
That clearly was not a good plan.
Fair.
I think I very briefly told myself I was going to be a graphic designer, and that just didn't work out. I think partly it was I was just in active addiction and couldn't do anything, right? But what I told myself at the time was that I couldn't sit behind a computer all day, which is true. Like that's a very true thing. I cannot do that. So somebody told me, they suggested that I become a personal trainer at the time. And I was like, oh, that's a really good idea. So I did that, and it kind of right. I did that. So it
Yes.
started my journey into this, and I did work with a lot of adult clients at first, and then when I would get a younger person, because I didn't really work with youth at the time, but just a younger person who could do athletic things, I was like, I like it just lit a fire in me, and I loved it. And I
Mm,
didn't even know strength and conditioning was a thing. I think,
mm,
and then I guess just somehow started to learn that, oh, strength and conditioning coaches are things.
mm,
Um, and through doing that, I interned at Monmouth University because I lived near there at the time in their strength and conditioning department,
mm.
and realized that, oh, this is a thing. This is awesome. This is what I want to do. So then I went to school out in Colorado to study it. Yeah. And then just thinking I want to be a collegiate strength coach, right? But kind of just told you how that path has got changed as well, and actually got a great job in New Jersey as the assistant strength coach at high school. And that's kind of when I started the journey into more youth athletes, high school and middle school, rather than collegiate. I really liked the high school population better than college.
Wow. Is there less pressure on high school versus college?
I just feel like for me, I felt like I had more of an impact on the high school kid because there's a little bit less pressure, but honestly, today that pressure is growing just because of the way youth athletics and college athletics is evolving.
Mm,
But you know that saying that like you kind of become what you needed
mm,
almost back then. Like I think
mhm,
there's a saying in the coaching world that like you could become the coach that you needed. I
mhm.
think that's what happened for me. I think I kind of became the coach that I needed in high school. Like in high school, I was probably the most scared and the most terrified. So I'm kind of just becoming that coach to help the coach I wish I had in high school.
I love that. That's amazing. I think there's a lot to for that like to be translated into like the therapy world, of like being the therapist that like you wish you had,
Yeah.
kind of thing, or like kind of being the listener that you wished you had had at that age kind of thing. So I think that that translates into a lot of different fields, but that's beautiful.
Yeah, I think it's like a thing. It's not just in the coaching
Oh
field.
yeah. Oh yeah, it's totally a thing. And it's understandable.
Wait, I have a question. Why are you going to Planet Fitness all of a sudden?
Oh, well, my friend Lauren, I made her an exercise program and she wanted me to help her like figure out some machines. And so I
Mhm.
went with her, which was also helpful because then I could record myself doing some of those machines, which I can then use. I link videos to all of my fitness plans so that people can click on the exercise and see exactly how to do the exercise and a description of it. But I don't have like a leg press machine at home or like a hamstring curl machine at home. So I was like, oh, I'll just go with Lauren one time and then she could just like be my little videographer and tape me doing these exercises. But then I was like, you know what? I kind of feel like I might join so that I once it's like $25 a month for their like higher tier plan. And I was like, even if I go once every Saturday, not even during the week, but I go 4 Saturdays a month, I've paid for it in that. And then I can just save and use some machines in there,
There you go.
you know? Because like I wanted to buy a leg press machine, but it's like a leg press hack squat machine in one is like 800 something dollars. And it's excessive.
And they take up a lot of room.
They do. We did measure. We do have a home gym in our basement, but that would have taken up most of the space. Okay, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this podcast, which we have a tentative name for, but
Yeah, we won't say that yet. Or can we say it? I don't. We could edit it out.
we can edit it out. Yeah.
Sure. So can you re-say what you said?
Why are we starting the Better Health podcast?
So I think we're starting the Better Health podcast because when you got your personal training certification, I was so excited for you because I was like, oh my God, she's a therapist with a personal trainer. Like she's just gonna crush it. Like that's the perfect combination right there, right? And then I remember I'm saying that like before you got your certification in about May, right?
July.
July. And you
Yeah.
started studying like this time last year, I feel like.
Yes.
And I remember back then I was so excited for you. And in the back of my mind for the past while, like I've wanted to start a podcast, but being, and I'm sure you could relate to this, like a solo entrepreneur, it's really fucking lonely.
Yes.
And it was just another thing. And I really wanted to do this other thing, but I didn't want to do this thing alone. So I reached out to you and you were just so all into it. And I left like no hesitation. You were just like, yeah, let's do that. But it also just makes sense because of our professions, right? Like I'm more experienced in the strength and conditioning world. You're a lot more experienced in the mental health mindset world, and we're both interested in those things. So it overlaps, and it's kind of just seems like the perfect thing for us to do.
Oh yeah. It like makes 100% sense in my
Hmm.
mind and in your mind. And I think it's just like, I don't know, I love doing things like this with people that I've known for a really long time who
Hmm.
are on similar paths, right? Like I think that there's something like so special about the fact that it's not like, not that this is not special, but it's not like we just met 2 weeks ago at a conference and we were like, let's start a podcast together, you know? It's like we have drifted and come back together at other times in our lives and are so aligned on so many things. And I just think there's something so special there about like two people who have had a lot of different experiences that like can relate to like the general population as well. And then coming from both of our angles of our professions, I just think it aligns so well. I just think it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, and then just I'm you were kind of alluding to this, but the whole sobriety thing too, like it just makes so much sense.
Yes, it makes so much sense. I'm so fucking excited.
Yeah, so I'm excited. Should we just share a few of the things that okay, wait, we're gonna talk about other things coming up, but when we talk about imposter syndrome, that's gonna be one of the things that we talk about, right? We
Yep.
have to talk about how as soon as we got off of the phone last time when we were preparing for this, I was just like, oh shit, what are our camp friends gonna think? And I got really, really scared that they were gonna like laugh at us. But it's funny because I haven't talked to them in like years. Like, why do I care what the hell they think?
That
But yeah,
is
that was still like a scary thought that I had.
that is so interesting that that's a thought that you had.
Did
I
you have it?
no, I didn't. But I'll tell you why. It's because so many years ago, I stopped giving a shit about what anybody from my past who is not in my life anymore thinks
Mhm.
about anything that I do. And I think that this is so fucking cool and so brave. And I think there's really something to be said for like people who are willing to start a podcast. Starting a podcast is not easy. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of vulnerability. It is putting yourself out there. And I think that that is something to be like really celebrated. And so I think it's really admirable that you and I are doing this together because like that's fucking awesome. That's fucking
Yeah,
awesome.
I think so too. Yeah, thank you. Maybe in a few years, I will not have that thought and be in a place where I don't. I mean, I'm for the most part, I am in that place, right? But
Yeah.
like, I'm still me, right? And I'm still dealing with all of my anxiety and all the things. I'm so much better at it today than I
Yes.
was. And the thing is, too, like, yeah, that thought's not going to stop me. I'm just going to,
Correct.
right?
Correct. That is exactly what I was going to say to you is you may have had that thought, but it didn't stop you from doing it. You didn't text me right after and be like, "Ooh, maybe we shouldn't do this. I think I thought twice about it and we should." That would have been a problem, right? That's where anxiety can become like really, really problematic for us is when it then stops us from doing something. But when it's a fleeting thought or a fleeting feeling, like those are just going to be that's going to be how we are probably forever as people with anxiety, right? The reality is anxiety doesn't just go away forever. It just we learn how to manage it better and we learn how to push through whatever those feelings are because we know that on the other side is something good.
Yeah, for sure. And we are going to wrap up here. But what I did text you was about your protein. Which how is that going, by the way?
Not very well.
Awesome.
Not very well. We're going to need to have a lot of discussions about that.
Okay. But we're going to talk about that in future episodes, just like protein consumption for building muscle, right? And what else are we going to talk about?
We're going to talk about therapy in general, like our experiences professionally, Maybe we can talk about like how to find a therapist. I made an Instagram on that too. We're going to
Good.
talk about getting out of your comfort zone. We're going to talk about weighing yourself. We're going to talk about a lot of things.
We're gonna get super vulnerable and we're gonna have fun and it's gonna be awesome.
It's going to be awesome. Stay tuned. This was great.
Did you hit stop?
I did not. I didn't know if we were going to make an outro, like a little out. We could always add that after.
Sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll hit stop.